Hey, it's Zero at ReviewZoneHD. I'm bringing you guys a first impressions of NHL 13. I'm starting this video off showing my trophy list that you can see I've actually played the last few years of hockey games on the PS3, even some NHL 2K in there, which I didn't really go after trophies too much in those games, but I want to say last year's title, I played around 100 online league matches. Some of those videos I've uploaded onto my channel here. The year before I played around 200, so I've spent quite a bit of time on the ice. But let's go ahead and get right into the first impressions. Sports titles are probably the hardest games to review and criticize because so little changes between each year. I mean, you're kind of reviewing the same thing over and over again, but this title is kind of the exception to all that. I played around 5 games tonight. This is going to be the demo out of the PlayStation Store, and I noticed a huge improvement over last year's game in not only the core mechanics, but also how fluid the gameplay is. The puck doesn't feel like it's attached to your body anymore. It feels a bit more loose, but not in a bad way. I wasn't having trouble holding onto the puck. It wasn't like going all over the place, but I no longer feel like an overpowered character that can just bowl through 3 defenders on his way to the goal. The hitting is vastly improved, which I don't think I had any big hits in the game that you're watching right here. But the very first game that I played with the recorder off, I knocked one guy head first into the boards. He crumpled to the ice and went out injured. It was a really hard hit too, so it wasn't like a freak accident or just a lucky hit. In fact, it was one of those hits like when it happens you're kind of like, man, that should break his neck. And it was actually kind of nice to see the game recognize that it was a devastating hit. Because I can tell you from first-hand experience playing last year with a very fast but very weak player, I hardly ever got knocked out of a game. I would just get dragged up and down the ice getting hit, but I wouldn't really get injured that often. Another thing I noticed is the AI is vastly improved on here, and I'm not just referring to my own teammates that were moving in correct positions and just being where they should be. I'm referring to the actual computer that I'm playing against. I actually witnessed the computer run some design plays that took advantage of where I was at on the ice. I chased a guy down near the right side boards on one play like I shouldn't be. I was chasing the puck, and the computer drove a guy down the middle of the ice in front of my goalie for the pass and a wide open shot. And yes, I've seen that stuff in previous year's titles, but it all felt very predictable, whereas this sequence of events really felt like the computer was reading what I was doing and reacting to it, not the other way around. And I witnessed a few shots that I took in some of the other games, like last year's title, that went through the goalie, went past the goalie and into the net like 90% of the time. But in this title, the goalie was actually blocking just about everything fancy that I was throwing at him, even on a couple breakaways. So all the stuff they claimed that they improved upon, I believe you can actually tell a noticeable difference on here for once. They also tweaked the player speed. I was finally able to slip past the defenseman on occasion, which is something that almost never happened last year. In last year's title, regardless of your player speed, if you and a defenseman were crossing center ice at the exact same time, it was friggin' impossible to pull far enough away from them to get a clean, uncontested shot almost 99 out of 100 times. And that's dramatically changed this year. There were a couple of times playing that I actually caught the defenseman sleeping. He was moving in a bit too close, and I just absolutely dusted him. But that's what I've picked up on so far as the gameplay goes, just playing a few games tonight of the demo. And when you're playing a game for the first time and you can see that many immediate differences just right away, it's definitely a step in the right direction for bringing something new to the table. But let's talk about a few things that I didn't like. I've been complaining about this for the last 2 years' titles, but I really feel like the fights need to be vastly improved upon, just completely reworked. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what the fights are in this game, but it's just exactly identical to last year's title, which is identical to the year before. I couldn't tell any difference, and it feels like if you're going to take a penalty for fighting, they should make it a bit more entertaining. I'm not saying they need to just import Fight Night into here, but I feel like you should have a bit more options with what goes on during the fights. Another thing I don't like about this year's title compared to last year's is the menus. And yes, that's a very small nitpick, but I really liked last year's menus, and this one feels like they took a step backwards. They look clean and nice, but they just don't look as good as last year's game in my opinion. Some of you guys can disagree with me on that one, but that's my thoughts on it. Now, I wasn't able to test out the online on here because the demo restricts you to playing offline third period match for this game only. I didn't really care about which team I was playing as. I'm a Hurricanes fan. I live in Charlotte and go to the Charlotte Checker games multiple times each year, so I am a true hockey fan, but I don't really care about these two teams. But going back to the game, I do think they made enough changes to make it worth a purchase this year. Even if you own last year's title, which I got rid of my copy a few months back because I had faith, I had confidence that they would deliver with this year's game, and I'm pretty relieved that they did, because I would have hated to have to get on here and talk about how nothing has changed in this year's game, and it's the same thing all over again with a few bells and whistles, which very well could have happened. It should be pretty interesting to see how all these changes will affect the drop-in and league games. That was one thing that I absolutely hated last year, is playing against those people that had like 1,000 or more games under their belt in the league games, and they knew exactly how to do that really stupid wrist shot that's taken like 15 or 20 feet straight in front of the goalie but at a slight angle. If you played last year's game, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, and it went in time and time again. It seems like the goalies on here may be just intelligent enough to stop that kind of trash, but only time's going to tell if people are going to be able to figure out some other way to abuse them or not. I'm pretty sure I'll be getting this title and bringing you guys some coverage for it. I'm not exactly sure if it's going to be on release day or not. I haven't made up my mind on what I'm going to be doing next month, because I know Borderlands 2 is going to be coming out, and I already have several other titles lined up that I will be covering, so we'll just kind of have to see, how busy I am and how all that's going to go. But that's pretty much all the commentary I have for this video. This is Zero at ReviewZoneHD, and thanks for stopping by.